Hi, everybody. I'm Susan Greenhall, the Senior Advisor for Election Security at Free Speech for People. On Wednesday, November 13th, a group of computer security experts and myself sent a letter to Vice President Harris asking her to initiate recounts in key swing states of the paper ballots to ensure that the election can be verified. We raised this issue and asked for these recounts based on two important facts. One, our voting systems were breached between 2021 and now by operatives working for Donald Trump, and there has never been any sort of comprehensive federal investigation. This occurred in many states, and I'll get back to that in a second. And two, because though there are some audits that will occur in the swing states after the election, they're going to occur after the window for the potential to call for recounts has closed. So should there be errors or anomalies or something that shows up in the audit, it will be too late to call for a recount, to do a full recount and count all the paper ballots. So it is important to call for these recounts right away now before that window closes. And getting back to the software breaches, you probably never heard this. It is a wild story, but it's absolutely documented and unrefuted. It is a very crazy thing that did not get the necessary press coverage when it happened, although there was some coverage in the Times and the Washington Post and the Associated Press. Following his loss in 2020, Donald Trump's attorneys, Sidney Powell and Jesse Banal, hired operatives to go into certain election offices where there were sympathetic election supervisors or election officials to allow them to go in, access the voting machines, and take copies of voting system software. And that's the software that records and counts votes. This occurred in Georgia, in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, in Colorado. They also obtained software in Arizona, but the software was obtained through the Arizona audit, but then was shared with a much broader network of election deniers. This first came to light in 2022 because of a civil litigation in Georgia, not because any law enforcement had actually uncovered it or done anything to investigate or find out, but because a civil litigation that had been going on since 2017 that had nothing to do with the 2020 election, Curling v. Raffensperger, and one of the main plaintiffs, Coalition for Good Governance, were able to find out through discovery in their lawsuit that these operatives hired by Donald Trump attorneys had gone in and taken copies of the software. So they got documents, they got the contracts, they got all the emails back and forth about it. They also got the surveillance camera footage that's behind me. It's not disputed. No one's disputed. They took deposition testimony. People admitted to having gotten the software and then sharing it with this broader network of election deniers. After that happened, we started to see that there had been other breaches and we could tie them all together. Then evidence was clear that the breaches were connected. The software that was taken in Coffee County, Georgia, was sent to the attorney in Michigan who was involved in several breaches there. The attorney in Michigan was working with the county in Pennsylvania that allowed the breaches in Pennsylvania. There's a very clear integrated network, which is deeply documented, and not by hearsay, not by news articles, but by public records requests, and most importantly and most frequently by court records, things that were filed with either in evidence in court, either sworn declarations or documents that were produced in discovery, or testimony that was taken in depositions in civil litigation. It is this, even though it sounds like a crazy story, it is documented to the nth degree. And this is a very serious breach of election security for partisan actors to have copies of the election system software. Bad actors can do bad things when they have that software. When Dominion was first asked for its software in the Arizona audit, they said that they don't want to give it to cyber ninjas because giving its software to partisan actors would do irreparable damage to the election security interests of the nation, quote unquote. After it came out that the software actually had been taken, Dominion went silent, didn't want to say anything further about it. But the CIO of Georgia when his testimony was taken before the breaches were known to have actually occurred, he said it would provide a roadmap to be able to access and compromise or corrupt a system. So this is actually something that's very dangerous in the wrong hands. And yet there has been no federal investigation to address it, to try and get the software back, or to understand what's been done with it, or to really investigate and find out the breadth of it. We know that there's been a little bit of localized prosecution in Colorado and Mesa County, where Tina Peters was found guilty. In Michigan, there are pending charges currently against for the software breaches. But in Georgia, the only law enforcement that has taken any action is the Fulton County District Attorney, who charged these alleged crimes as part of her RICO indictment. That is what Sidney Powell pled guilty to her involvement in those elements of getting illegal or unlawful access to the voting system software. But what's important to know also, in addition to what they got, the Dominion software, they were able to obtain software from ES&S, which is the largest vendor in the country. Between the two of them, they comprise, they count about 70% of the votes in the country between ES&S and Dominion. We know that they have the Dominion software because there have been declarations filed in lawsuits by the people who took the software saying, we have software from ES&S that was servers and tabulators, and we've analyzed it. And these were lawsuits that were brought to challenge certain election results or to challenge the use of voting machines. So it's hiding in plain sight that this software was taken. We know that computer security experts, as well as Dominion, as well as the CIO of Georgia, have said this is very dangerous in the wrong hands. The Attorney General also had first denied giving it to Sidney Powell in one of her lawsuits in Georgia, calling it the keys to the software kingdom, and said, you can't give this to them. But they went ahead and took it anyway. They've had it since 2021. And we can say with certainty, there is no federal investigation going on. We have written from Free Speech for People, we and a number of computer scientists have written multiple letters to the FBI, DOJ, and special counsel, as well as CISA at Department of Homeland Security, urging investigations starting in late 2022 when this first surfaced. There is no evidence. Public records requests show that there's been no attempts by the feds to contact any of the places where the breaches have occurred. There's been no contact, no subpoenas, no request for information. And furthermore, we did get a letter back from the FBI, which essentially said, no, we're not doing this. That was back in early 2023. And I met with the FBI several months ago, and it was apparent from that discussion that there is no investigation going on. So a massive election security breach occurred. It's basically been ignored by our federal law enforcement. There has been no effort to find out where this software has gone, although we know from these records that I mentioned that have been made public through litigation as well as from public records requests that it has been spread through a broad network of election deniers, that nothing has been done to get it back. And one thing people often assume is they figure, oh, well, they must have replaced the software by now, right? They took the software, so they replaced it. No, this is the same software that's sitting in the systems that we voted on this election was the same software that was taken in these voting system breaches. Thank you for listening. We are strongly calling on the VP to seek recounts so we can be sure that our election results are correct, even though it suffered this breach. That's why paper ballots make our elections resilient. If we go back and count the paper ballots, we know they are resilient against the potential for some sort of disruption. We need recounts of paper ballots. Thanks so much for listening. You can learn more at our website if you go to election protection and then looking at challenging insecure voting equipment and demanding a federal investigation into voting system software breaches. Thanks. And that's freespeechforpeople.org.